Hey everyone! So the story of the Netherlands? It all starts with water. Imagine a land that was basically made by fighting the wild North Sea. For thousands of years, big rivers like the Rhine and Meuse piled up dirt and sand. This made a flat, swampy place that flooded super easily. The first people who lived here had to deal with floods all the time. They had to get smart, or they wouldn't make it. So, what did they do? They built their houses on big man-made hills called turpen. That was like their first big idea to handle all that water. Living there was like making a deal with nature every single day. You had to be tough and clever. When the water went down, they could farm and fish. But a big storm could come and wreck everything in just one night. Even the Romans called this place the Low Countries because they knew it was a tricky spot to live. To survive, everyone had to work together. That was the only way to keep the water out. Over hundreds of years, they got even better at claiming land from the water. Windmills pumped water out of areas called polders, and canals were dug everywhere like watery roads. These folks weren't just playing defense, they were actually making new land, turning swamps into good farmland. All this hard work, day in and day out, made the Dutch people who they are today, great at working together and coming up with new ideas. The land was always changing, and so were the people. They got closer and stronger by facing these challenges together. Windmills, dikes, those big walls to hold back water and canals. They became famous signs of how clever the Dutch are. The Dutch figured out how to work nature, not just fight against it. They really started to believe that if everyone worked together, they could do amazing things. This idea stuck with them. And this way of thinking, it helped them do some truly incredible stuff later on. So, the Netherlands is pretty special. It's a country that its own people basically built with water, strong wills, and by sticking together. They laid the groundwork for a really unique country, all set for whatever came next. Alright, so before the Netherlands was even a country, it was like a quilt made of different groups of people, like the Batavians and Frisians. They all lived right where the land met the water. The Romans tried to take over, but these folks fought back hard. The Romans never really managed to control the swampy north part. When Rome got weaker, new kings called Franks came, and Christianity started to spread. But the local people still liked being independent. Then came the Vikings. Their raids made communities team up to protect themselves, which made each group feel even more like its own unique team. Some powerful leaders popped up, like the Counts of Holland. They wanted to be their own bosses, even if big emperors didn't like it. Towns like Dordrecht and Utrecht got bigger and richer from trading stuff. They even got special permissions and rights. Because these towns were pretty independent, the people became really practical and good at business. That teamwork they learned from fighting the water, they started using it for trading and running their towns too. Around the 1400s, these Low Countries ended up being ruled by folks from Burgundy and then by another group called the Habsburgs. The new rulers wanted everyone to be the same and follow one religion, but that didn't sit well with the Dutch, who liked their freedom and were starting to follow new Christian ideas called Protestantism. Things got pretty tense because people felt their freedoms were being taken away. You could say the seeds were planted for people to fight back and rule themselves. The Dutch were getting ready to stand up for how they wanted to live. A really big showdown was just around the corner. The 80 Years' War, which went on from 1568 to 1648, is what really made the Netherlands its own country. The Dutch areas, called provinces, rebelled against Spain, who was ruling them. They were tired of being told what religion to follow and losing their local rights. A guy named William of Orange became the main leader of this fight, a real symbol of Dutch spirit. The war was super tough. Cities like Haarlem and Leiden went through terrible times with long attacks, but the people just wouldn't give up. A group called the Sea Beggars, who were like sea rebels, captured some important towns, which really helped the fight. In 1579, the northern provinces joined together in something called the Union of Utrecht. And by 1581 they officially said, "We're independent," in a paper called the Act of Abjuration. The Dutch basically said that if a king treats his people badly, he shouldn't be king anymore. That was a pretty wild idea back then. The war dragged on for many years, but the feeling of being one people with one goal just got stronger. They even used posters and stories to show how the Dutch were fighting for freedom. All the sacrifices they made created a spirit of independence that couldn't be broken. Finally, in 1648, a peace treaty called the Peace of Munster made it official. The Netherlands was independent. A brand new chapter was starting for the Dutch Republic. The 1600s were known as the Dutch Golden Age. Seriously, it was a time when things were booming, lots of money, amazing art, and Dutch influence all over the world. Trading by sea was huge. The Dutch East India Company became the world's first giant international company, and boy did it bring in the cash. Amsterdam became a super important city for money, like a bank for the world, and this helped create a strong middle class of people. Art was everywhere. Painters like Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Hals painted pictures that really showed what life was like. Smart people like Huygens and Spinoza were making huge discoveries in science and how we think about life. Universities in the Netherlands were popular. Smart folks came from all over Europe because it was a place where you could freely share ideas. All that money also helped pay for better roads, schools, and ways to help people in need. Now, it wasn't all perfect. There were dark sides like taking advantage of colonies and the slave trade, but still, what they achieved was pretty amazing. This golden age left behind a legacy of new ideas, being practical, and looking out at the world. So that Dutch golden age couldn't last forever. England and France started getting stronger, and they began to challenge the Dutch in trade and sea power. Expensive wars and arguments inside the country started to make the Dutch Republic weaker. There were power struggles, like tug-of-wars, between the rich merchant families and the royal family, the House of Orange. This made things unstable. Then, a group called the Patriots, who were inspired by new ideas about fairness and people's rights, started pushing for changes to make the government more like a democracy. There was some trouble and fighting, but the old way of doing things mostly stayed put, until the French Revolution shook things up. In 1795, a new government called the Batavian Republic took over from the old one. Then Napoleon from France came and ruled for a while. After Napoleon was defeated, the Netherlands became a kingdom with a king, William I, but also with a set of rules called a constitution. It was the start of another new story for the Dutch. The Netherlands rolled into the 1900s as a kingdom with a constitution. They had lost Belgium, which was once part of their land, but this kind of firmed up who they were. They stayed out of World War I, which was good, but it still caused money problems. At least they weren't in the fighting. But then came World War II. Nazi Germany invaded in 1940. The city of Rotterdam was bombed badly and the whole country was taken over. It was a terrible time for Jewish people, so many lost their lives. The Diary of Anne Frank became a famous reminder of this tragedy. Brave Dutch people fought back in secret, but the war left the country deeply hurt and in ruins. When they were freed in 1945, everyone was more determined than ever to have freedom and work with other countries. The years after the war were all about rebuilding their homes, towns, and lives. The Netherlands came out of it all ready to build a much better future. After World War II, believe it or not, the Netherlands rebuilt itself super fast and everyone worked together. It was amazing. Help from America, called the Marshall Plan, gave them money to rebuild. Cities, factories, and roads rose up from all the destruction. They had this cool way of working together called the polder model. This meant the government, bosses, and workers all cooperated. It helped keep things stable and growing. They built something incredible called the Delta Works, a huge system of dams and barriers. This showed off Dutch smarts in building and protected the land from big floods. The economy got modern and strong. Big companies like Philips, Unilever, and Shell became known worldwide. The port of Rotterdam became one of the busiest anywhere. Dutch farming became super efficient and full of new ideas, a model for others. Good schools and smart research were big reasons for their money success. The Netherlands joined groups like the EU, NATO, and the UN, ready to team up with other countries. They also made laws that were ahead of their time for social issues and really cared about human rights. That was the mark of this new era. The Dutch turned really tough times into a modern country that's doing great. Education, learning stuff, is a really big deal for Dutch success. Their school system has lots of different ways for kids to learn, making sure almost everyone can read well and has good skills. Their universities are top-notch and pull in smart students and teachers from all over the world. This helps them come up with new ideas. They also think it's important to keep learning your whole life so workers can always do new things. Everyone gets healthcare, it's for all. They focus on stopping people from getting sick in the first place and making sure the care is good. And if people face hard times, there's a strong system to help them out. It's like a safety net. Looking out for each other and being fair are really important values here. Putting effort into their people is what helps the country do well and stay strong. The Netherlands today is like a cool mix of old history and brand new ideas. Traditions like Sinterklaas, their version of Santa and King's Day, a big national party, connect people young and old. And those famous windmills and tulips? They remind everyone of where the country came from. Being practical, accepting of others and believing everyone is equal are still super important parts of being Dutch. That polder model of working together? That comes from a long history of cooperation. Now the Dutch have new challenges like climate change and welcoming people from all different backgrounds, but they're tackling these with the same smart thinking that built their country from the water up. Their story is all about being tough and able to change, from fighting the sea to having a big impact on the world. How they went from windmills to being a player on the world stage really shows the amazing spirit of a small country with big dreams.